Today we're going to be playing Manor Lords, the early access medieval city builder that's been sweeping the nation. Up to the task of building a medieval empire is our boy Hans here. And here are the settings I'll be playing as so expert players can tell me how I'm playing incorrectly down in the comments. Okay, let's cut the crap and get into it. So here we are in the beautiful lands of Ander Dornley. Lands which Hans must turn into something great. We have a spectacular iron deposit. A very deep and mucky clay deposit. Oh, and over here, some of the juiciest berries you'll ever have had the pleasure to suck on. I think we can make this work. Everyone in the camp looks fit as a fiddle and is eager about what they're about to help Hans What the F is that? Oh no. No, 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 no. These lands are infested with deer! If there is one thing Hans just cannot accept in this world, it is the grunting and arrogance of those dirty stickheads. Oh no, and not just any deer, but phase deer! Oh. But at least this discovery has given Hans an absolute focus for this city. A goal unlike no other, to rid these lands of the stickhead infestation. Now I know what you are thinking. If I want to get rid of those horrid deer, I just need to hunt them all without mercy. But no, Hans isn't your run-of-the-mill genocidal tyrant. He is a proper Manor Lord. These deer shall not die and shall not be used for resources. Instead, the goal of this playthrough is to get the deer out of Ander Dornley, or rather, No Deerlandia, via purely peaceful means. So to give them a gentle nudge to indicate that they aren't wanted in these parts, I'm just gonna start destroying their habitat via some tasteful logging. That's right, move out of here. Well, they didn't move far, but it's at least a start. Okay, so to grow my little medieval podunk beyond the 5 starter families, I'll need 2 forms of food and 1 form of clothing. In a typical playthrough, hunting those stupid deer would provide resources for 1 food and 1 clothing, so leaving the deer alone is very much going to slow down my early progress. To get past the clothing hurdle, I'm going to look towards sheep. So for my first town perk, I chose sheep breeding, but I've already blown all my coin on an ox and cabbage farms, so I'll still need to raise money to acquire my first sheeps. But after that, I'll then be able to freely accumulate more sheep through the sensual acts of sheep coitus.
Why do I have to carry this around?
The city slowly grew as I accumulated and sold off excess basic goods, all while the herd of unwanted deer circled nearby, bleating horribly at my townsfolk. After months of wheelings and dealings, I had the cash on hand to import my first sheep the following spring. But it was still a slow process as my 1 sheep could only provide so much wool for clothes. And then I needed to wait for my vegetable gardens to start producing veggies. It took me till September of the 2nd year to finally have enough juicy berries, juicy cabbages, and juicy yarn to satisfy the needs of my initial 5 families. Now I just had to wait and hope for some new blood to move in. And in October, the new blood moved in. And if that wasn't enough, the sheep also got the coitus. The city was on the up and up, so Hans took a moment to assess the nearby virus and found the deer seemingly moving out of the forest and encroaching onto the village. Now I know I can just plop a building onto the deer's turf to shoo them off, but I'm not about to resort to those tactics yet. Keeping them close makes gathering intelligence on the enemy far easier. But does this also allow the phase deer to gather intel on us as well? The hooved menace remained in their spot, but my boys from the village who were hard at work chopping down the deer's home had finally felled enough trees to make the stickheads skedaddle. But not as far away as I'd have liked. But good news! My first burgage plot is eligible to be upgraded to level 2. I'm gonna pick this one on the corner. Except somehow the game selected the one behind it? Okay game, thanks. But once that plot finished updating, it became my boyer. And when the intended corner plot upgraded, I made it my blacksmith. In February, it was time to add more housing, and this time, I impeded on the deer's territory, triggering a migration that caused the deer to finally scurry far away from my town center. Yes, even you dumb deer, get! Spring rolled around and it was time to expand my food operation by laying down some farm fields and researching the heavy plow. And while moving this plow to the fields, I realized that in a world of phase deer, there also exist phase oxen. But the phase ox took the new plow and dutifully got to work plowing those fields. But while the phase ox did a great job for the village, the other ox, who I will call Oxy McAsshole, just stood around and blocked the vendor stalls. Rude. Not wanting any of those stupid deer to think they were safe, I threw down a new logging camp near their territory so that my lumberjacks can continue fighting the good fight against them. In May, I was setting up a new trade route to export the copious amounts of carrots and cabbage that my people were producing, when I got a notice. Oh my, raiders are en route, and they'll be here in 1 year! Oh. Well, so I guess the raiders are a higher priority threat than a deer, so I shifted my efforts towards making implements of warfare so that my village would be equipped when the time for battle arrived. So quit your loitering, you lazy boyer, we got a war brewing! Over the next few months, I noticed that some of the men in my village didn't seem very bright. Mainly the loggers I'm talking about here. We have whichever genius fell this tree and almost took out whatever building that was. Then another one who just almost took out this fence with a tree. You two look suspicious. Did one of you do this? Not the ox! But at least the woman folks seem more intelligent. Like this lady, who recognized the advantage of the phase ox and used its ability to create a time-saving shortcut.
It was simply a bad bet.
Midsummer rolled around and one of the houses in town started on fire. Now the idiots living in the city thought, yeah, just a lightning strike. But Hans the Lord knew better. This wasn't a lightning strike. This had all the hallmarks of deer magic. Those rotten bastards had just launched a salvo. This act of aggression would not be forgotten. But there would be no swift retaliation, as a bandit camp appeared in the area and posed a more lucrative target. The boys hungered for blood, so they rallied and headed out to battle.
Stay together! Come on, lads, come on! Moving! Last night together!
A quick victory was had, and all the men would sleep easy that night as the sounds of the men they had butchered the day before would replay in their heads as they drifted off into the dream world. As the next winter rolled around, Hans took a walk to watch his villagers toil. Things were going well in No Deerlandia. A tavern started to get built to keep everyone drunk and happy. The sheep were still and the idiot loggers continued to be idiots. I mean, look at this one. Does that man really think this person's fence is a felled tree? Idiot! Time continued on and soon it was spring, and the loggers were still idiots that I'm surprised have lived this long. But if the trees didn't get them, then maybe the raiders will, as they are now only 25 days out. Seeing the quality of those boys had me worried, so I hired the Wayward Sons to help me in the upcoming battle. The raiders arrived and I formed up my boys at the choke point created at this river crossing. The two sides made contact and all hell broke loose. Men were screaming, men were dying. This merchant, wait, merchant? Buddy, you don't want to go that way. Oh, good job. But soon my idiot boys and the wayward sons emerged victorious. Huzzah! I sent the mercenaries home, but before returning my own armies to the village, I set them off to deal with a much less threatening bandit camp that had been discovered nearby. And well, the idiots finally got bested by their idiocracy. See, the archer division, they were obviously not made up of the lumberjacks because they had no issue navigating to the battlefield. But the melee troops, you know, the logging types who are trained to swing axes, well, they got lost in the forest like the idiots they are. And by the time I realized they were being stupid, the archers had already engaged. I tried to retreat the archers until the loggers could catch up, but they didn't move fast enough, resulting in the entire archer division getting butchered while the loggers tried to pull their asses out of the forest. A bad day in No Deerlandia, but at least the gravediggers now had something to do. But there was no time to waste, so it was back to the grind. The crops were harvested, the ox were being ox, I guess, and the new charcoal burners passed Hans's rigorous inspection. Beer was being delivered to the taverns, and all the new widows could gather there to look to replace their dead husbands. And most critical of all, the war with the deer had resumed. The inhabitants of No Deerlandia continued about their days, doing the things that inhabitants of medieval villages tend to do. But out past the village, at the cliffs where the deer have staked their claim, something was afoot. Now, I'm no deerologist, but I'm pretty sure that being able to traverse the steep cliffs isn't something their dumb little hooves should allow, so Hans went to investigate firsthand. Ah! Oh my god! He survived that fall, but the implication of the phase deer manufacturing phase rocks was dark indeed. Perhaps my loggers fell into this trap and weren't quite the idiots I had made them out to be. But theories aside, we needed to up the pressure onto the hooved. The loggers got to work while the village went on with its life. The usual loop of fighting battles, sheep the ox being ox, and my villagers just going about their merry ways. By the fall of the 6th year, I had expanded the warfront with a 3rd logging camp. No terrain was too steep for those loggers to fight the good fight, and soon they had butchered enough of the forest to force another migration. But once again, it was a short migration that drove the deer to the small strip of land between the cliff and the river where the deer continued to practice their phasing on the cliffside. There was still quite a bit of forest in their territory, so I set all of my logging camps to focus their efforts on these woods. And by the new year, the loggers had ravaged so much of the forest that even the weird oxen couldn't keep up with removing the logs. Hans went to go inspect the progress firsthand again, but this time he wasn't gonna fall for the phase deer's fake rock trap. He intentionally flew through it and, oh, took a little side trip under the sea, I see. Kind of cool that flowers still grow down here though, huh? Neat. After this swim, he took notice of these deer and how they were all pressed up against the shoreline. It seems that the deer territory had actually moved into the neighboring region. But was this enough to declare victory? Hell no! Most of the territory might be gone, but the deer were still here, and it was time to turn up the heat and resort to more drastic actions. The first thing I did was plop a shrine in what little territory the deer still owned, hoping they would move out of the state. But they didn't. They moved into some even deeper forests, and I wasn't waiting for the loggers to extract the trees as resources this time, so I used a marketplace tool to vaporize all the trees on the deer's turf. One would assume that going scorched earth would drive the deer away, but it didn't. Those hooved pieces of shit, they bleated defiantly in these newly formed fields. Well, fine then. If the lack of trees won't scare them away, then maybe the power of Satan will. Yeah! Take that, you deer! But it seemed even such a powerful hex wasn't enough to drive the deer away. Perhaps they didn't mind fields and a little bit of Satanism. But how about replacing it all with too many roads? Behold, the great anti-deer knot! God damn it! What's a Manor Lord gotta do to drive some stupid deer away around here? Farm fields. Farm fields drove them away. But you know what? That's not enough. If I'm gonna lock out those stickheads once and for all, a grand strategy was needed. So on top of the deer's territory, I plopped some housing. The deer ran back to where the pentagram was, so I turned the hex back on and plopped even more housing. They tried to run over here by my mines, but no, I locked them out with burgage. Back to the forest, boom, burgage. Over there, boom, more burgage. They tried with their deer magic again to roast my settlement, but that didn't stop me. Everywhere the deer went, boom, more housing. I had plentiful logs to keep building those lots, so I had those sons of bitches on the run. They had no place to hide from my construction destruction. Boom, 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 boom. And finally, as the villagers had made a good headway constructing all those homes, it was time for the coup de grace. To sanctify the grounds once walked upon by the horrid deer, a palace of chickens was erected in all the new housing. Cock after cock after cock were deployed to these plots to keep the deer away. And all of you out there doubting the power of the chickens, all of you snickering in the shadows thinking my plan was delusions, well, snick on this because, boom, the deer territory has been driven underground. Praise chickens! But this wasn't enough. The chickens may have cast the deer's territory down into hell, but the deer themselves still remained loitering around the village looking for a path to the underworld. So more chicken pens were erected on the site, causing the deer territory to move again, but remaining underground. Wherever they tried to set up shop under my lands, more chickens! Boom! 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 Finally, total dominance had been asserted. The deer's territory appeared in an area which was already completely earmarked for more chickens. The deer stumbled around in a stupor, unable to figure out how to get to their home. And while the rest of the chicken shield was constructed over their territory, I took this as a victory and bided my time to observe what the deer would do in this situation. They tried once again to burn No Deerlandia to the ground, but it failed, and I appeared to have deadlocked them into wandering in and out of my territory on the opposite side of the map from where their zone was cock-blocked. But was this finally a complete victory? Not while they still set hooves on my grass, it isn't. So I enlisted the help of the Manor retinue to push them back past the border. This worked, but keeping a wall of men in constant formation seemed an ill-fitting solution. So Hans made one more effort to erect a thick chicken shield right along the border. With 2 more chicken regiments constructed, he sent the retinue home and waited around to observe the outcome. No! The filthy stickheads were still slipping past the border. Bring more chickens! And with the 3rd chicken brick applied to Hans' wall of cock, it appeared that the deer menace had finally been purged. The deer had been pushed back into the forest and were stuck in an endless loop of being unable to return to No Deerlandia. And for Hans, this is all he wanted. To make the stickheads Hildebolt von Berenreuther's problem instead of his own. And so with the deer menace removed from their territory, the people and chickens of No Deerlandia lived happily ever after. Oh, what a story that was. I'm gonna pass out from lack of air, so if you wanna support me and give me more air, well, you can subscribe if you made it this far, and we'll see you in the next one.